BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Phil Goodlad and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. The news, the views, the analysis, everything you need from our beautiful game. It's Wednesday, the 12th of March, and as usual, plenty to get our teeth into.
Here's a chance for Hearts, Wilson! And there's young Wilson to throw it home from about 7 yards. Hearts won, St Mirren won.
There's some new names in Steve Clarke's latest Men's Scotland squad, and some news from the manager himself.
I've decided that I want to run the contract down. Obviously, if we have a fantastic year, get to the World Cup, maybe somebody will persuade me to stay. But at this moment in time, I'm happy to run my contract down.
So could this be Clarke's last campaign for Scotland? Plus, there's a big match coming on Thursday.
Kearney's in behind the defender. He's one-on-one. Huge moment in the tie! And Kearney rolls it home! Brilliant goal by Rangers!
We start to look ahead to Rangers' return game with Fenerbahce.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Great to have you along. I'm already confused. It's Wednesday, but it feels like a Friday because I have the wonderful Gemma Fay, who's part of our little Friday club here on the podcast. Gemma, I'm really interested in speaking to you as a former international player because I wonder how you would have performed in and around the Scotland changing room and, of course, on the pitch itself if you thought that the manager wasn't going to be sticking around. I'm yet to decide with Steve Clarke's announcement yesterday whether that was him reiterating that he's leaving or whether he was almost putting a breadcrumb to say, look, I'd like to stay. Does somebody want to speak to me about extending my contract? What do you think?
Well, which question do you want to answer first?
All of them.
All of them at once, okay. So I have played under a Scotland manager who I knew was leaving. So prior to it was Anna Signon, okay. Prior to the 2017 European Championships. She was leaving, but she told us well in advance. She told us in I guess the kind of January, February time.
But she definitively said, I will be leaving. This is my last hurrah. Yeah. So there was no confusion.
Yeah, no confusion.
So would this cause confusion for the players with Steve Clarke saying, well, I'm 75% sure I'll go, but I could stay?
No, I don't really think so. If you think about it, he's got 17 months left on his contract, so that's like nearly a year and a half. I think it's quite refreshing a little bit to say, like, I more than likely will probably go, but if things change, I might stay. And to put that out there into the ether. And I don't think it's a backhanded way of saying to the SFA, I think at 61 years old, he's grown up enough and his agent are grown up enough to have conversations with the Scottish Football Association. I don't think it's that. I think it's actually refreshingly an honest answer to a question perhaps that was posed or a comment that came up. And I look at the end of the day, he's been there for a long time. He's had unprecedented success in recent times that we haven't seen around about qualification for major tournaments, back-to-back Euros. And he stated quite clearly he'd absolutely love to take the team to a World Cup. But beyond that, and football, 17 months is a long time in football. You've got to remember that it's not that long ago that people were saying, oh, it's enough time after the Euros. The beginning of that last campaign, we were losing to Poland, it's time for Clarke to go, and then all of a sudden you beat Croatia twice and all of a sudden you're the national hero again. So, I think it's being really upfront and honest about where his thinking's at. And as he said in the interview as well, press conference, I might change my mind, but at this moment in time, that's where I'm at. And I think that's fine.
Having been in charge for 6 years, is there a natural point where change is a good thing?
Yes and no. Change is a good thing if not all parties want to continue, is the first thing. Change is a good thing if you can't continue to evolve where you are with the team. I guess the biggest example in football of change happening and where it's not gone well is, I guess, Man United and Sir Alex Ferguson. And that was about preparation for change. Man United didn't prepare effectively for the change that was coming. You've had somebody that's been in the club for, quarter of a century? So behind the scenes, you should be preparing for the change, not just in personality and person, but the change in systems and ways of working, which have been established, and know the direction to travel you're going in post that person. It's the same thing here. Is 6 years, absolutely. It's a long, in modern football, it's a long, long time. But in terms of is change a good thing? It can be a good thing if all the factors are pointed towards that being the necessary thing. It can also be difficult for one party if one party doesn't want it. Does the SFA really want Steve Clarke to leave when he's shown time and time again that he can evolve and he can iterate and he can achieve what he's there to do, which is to qualify for major championships? The next bit, doing something in major championships, that's not a Steve Clarke thing, that's a Scotland as a whole thing. We've never done anything in a major championship, to be honest. We haven't qualified out of a group. So, yeah, it will be interesting, but I don't think it's going to bother players one bit, to be honest.
You mentioned the evolution of the Scotland squad, and I wonder if we're seeing that with James Wilson and with Lennon Miller's call-up. Now, Steve Clarke yesterday in his press conference said, look, these are ones for the future. But do you see a scenario where Clarke is almost bringing those two in to give them a taste of what it's like to be involved in an international double header, to be able to train with the first team, to be able to get to grips with what the demands are like at this level, to then introduce them more in the World Cup campaign?
Yes and no. So first and foremost, Steve Clarke is not in the business of putting people in squads for putting people in squad sakes. And let me know that if he brings in James and he brings in Lennon, and let's be honest, it's two of the most spoken names in Scottish football this season when we talk on this podcast, or if you watch Sports Scene or listen on the Sports Scene on the radio, those are the names that you hear time and time again and people lauding about them. So I think they're well worth the call-up. Let's just put it there, regardless of age. I think in terms of these two matches, if they're required and Steve Clarke thinks they're needed, then he will absolutely use them. He's not just putting them in there for the point that you're making, but also for the point that you're making, which is if you have intentions of bringing them into the World Cup qualification campaign, this is a perfect opportunity for them to start to feel and understand how that squad works and the rhythm of being in your club, coming into squad, going back to club. That's new, that's different. That's a different type of psychological and physical loading where when you're young, you know, you kind of take in your stride a little bit, but you need to understand how that works.
Yeah, the return of Lewis Ferguson as well, Kieran Tierney, it's almost like two new players into the squad. That all looks good. Speak to me, though, Gemma, about the problem area of this squad that many of the papers are focused on this morning, and a problem area that you know very, very well, because we have a 42-year-old who is the first choice in goals. We have two goalkeepers who are not first choice in their clubs. If we say that Craig Gordon is going to be the first choice for the start of the World Cup campaign, is it potentially something that we could see him go all the way through and hopefully we qualify for the World Cup and he could actually start at the World Cup as a 43-and-a-half-year-old?
Well, I'm going to ask you a question. If you take his age off this, right, and talk to me about Craig Gordon's performances, would you suggest that he should be the first choice for Scotland?
Yes, I would. But you can't take his age out of it.
I can. I just did. And you just answered it.
But I answered it with that caveat.
But with that caveat, right? Fine, with that caveat. But it's like anything, and I get your point. And the point is not about Craig. The point is actually not about Craig Gordon. The point is about everything underneath Craig Gordon. That's the reality here. So we go through. So we've now got Kieran Sickler, who's coming from Ipswich, who doesn't play regularly for Ipswich. You have Liam Kelly for Rangers, who doesn't play regularly for Rangers. The next one after Craig Gordon happens to be his backup at this moment in time, Xander Clark at Hearts, who doesn't play regularly for Hearts. You've got Angus Gunn, who's out injured. Yes, plays regularly for Norwich when he's not. Questions about whether or not he is Scotland's number one, given the performances that we saw from him when he was given that position. So the problem is not that we have got Craig Gordon. that he's actually a bit of a problem solver at this moment in time, because the problem is that anything below that we've got a real issue with, because we're not seeing any of our next in line for Scotland playing regularly for Scotland. Now, you would argue that the only way that Craig Gordon isn't in that squad, be it first, second or third choice, is if he's injured at this moment in time. And if he's injured at this moment in time, then Xander Clarke comes on and takes that place, and you're hoping that Xander Clarke plays well so that he could probably step into that space. But yes, there's absolutely no denying we have a problem in the goalkeeping position in terms of the next ones in line considered to be of a level to be in the Scotland squad and potentially play for Scotland are not playing regularly.
How big a problem is that, given that this is your position and you know exactly what it takes to not just be regularly picked for your country, but
I think it's a problem. Yeah, I think it's a problem, and it's a problem because it's hard to it's hard to kind of it's hard to articulate a little bit to people that don't understand the position of goalkeeping, which is very much around about being not just physically attuned but mentally attuned to what's happening in that space. So if you are not starting first choice, the likelihood of you getting any first team matched action is really, really slim. Yes, you have some clubs who do a rotation. So if you're in cups, if you're in league competitions, sometimes keepers get rotated, but that requires you to maintain a cup run and be in multiple cup competitions. If you're an outfield player, the likelihood is that you will get game time throughout the year. It might be from the bench, it might not be the game time you want, but the likelihood is you'll get utilised in that squad because of the quantity of matches that are being played. They need to rotate, they need to maintain freshness, they need to ensure that minutes played is averaged out across the squad, and they need to keep your best players fit and available for those crucial matches. So when you are a goalkeeper and you're brought in, and it can happen really quickly, it can happen in a match, and it can happen just like that. You haven't had half an hour here, or 45 minutes there, or 60 minutes there. You've had nothing. You might have had some bounce games if you're lucky, but then all of a sudden you're in, and the expectation is that you're playing and competing at the level of somebody that's been playing regular in that position. And that's hard. It's not hard to do one-off, but it's hard to get yourself up to that place and space really quickly and go, which is the expectation. So you then add the fact that you're coming into an international scene. That's a different level of mental pressure again. So that ability to switch it on and off is a skill that goalkeepers have to learn. And that ability to maintain focus and be switched on to everything that's happening when you're not actually in it is really difficult.
Thursday night looks to be unmissable. Rangers host Fenerbahce after that 3-1 win in Istanbul. Barry Ferguson back up again against Jose Mourinho. I'm really looking forward to this one, Gemma, purely as somebody who over the years has been amused and bemused by Jose Mourinho, but also as somebody who I'm not sure what's going to happen tomorrow night, because Fenerbahce...
I don't think anybody is, Phil.
Well,
I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen tomorrow night. That's the beauty of it, isn't it?
The narrative is Fenerbahce have to come out. I mean, they've got to score 2 goals, which means that Rangers can pick them up.
That's not the narrative. That's like the fact.
Well, that is the fact, but the narrative will be in trying to score those 2 goals, they're going to have to go up the park, which means the narrative will be Rangers can then hit them off the back. My problem is, see if Fenerbahce score early and the sweetie peppers begin to rustle at Ibrox, this could be a nervous old night for Scottish football.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
I'm not sure a 90.
Why are you nervous? I'm not nervous. It's interesting. I find it fun. Like this. Are
you going to go down a psychological evaluation of me now?
No. Well, if you want,
bloody
but that'll cost you more than you pay me for the podcast. No, so like this is interesting. So I get excited. I don't get nervous by these things, and I always find it interesting. I have this and I have this conversation with lots of people. Before matches, when they're, regardless of what the connection they are to a club or a country or whatever, I say I'm nervous. I was like, what are you absolutely nervous about? There's nothing you can do about this. all you can do is go out there and enjoy the ride, be it up or be it down. It's like a roller coaster. And let's be honest, watching Rangers is a roller coaster right now. You absolutely do not know what you're going to get. Now, I'm not emotionally invested in Rangers, so I get the people that are emotionally invested, right? But regardless if I was or if I wasn't, this is not going to be a quiet match. This is not going to be 1-0 Rangers. Like, I don't think Rangers have the ability to sit in and just take that. Like, there's going to be drama. There's going to be a spectacular miss. There's going to be controversy. You could argue it should be 4-1. Like, something explosive is going to happen. And it's going to be fantastic and it's going to be great. And I think it's going to go down as one of the best and most entertaining nights of European football that Ibrox has ever seen. Because you have Jose Mourinho there. He ain't going to go quietly into the night. Therefore, his team isn't going to go quietly into the night. And then you've got Barry and his mates, right? And that they live for this. And you put that together in this big old mixing pot, which is crazy Scottish football Rangers in Europe. Who are they? Because I don't know who I don't know who this team is. I've not seen them all season. And all of a sudden, hi guys, this is what we can do. And it's going to be mental, I think. I hope. Otherwise, it's going to be boring, and I don't want that.
I think it's the back page of the Daily Record this morning. Brian Laudrup's on. He's flying in tomorrow night to give his backing to Barry Ferguson, he says. But he also says, see if Barry Ferguson does a job over Jose Mourinho and then takes that form into Sunday's Old Firm game and puts one over Celtic. He says, this could be Rangers' new manager. Now, it's far too early, even for a club legend like Brian Laudrup to think that. But there is a body of work that could develop between now and the end of the season where Barry Ferguson is the chosen one at Ibrox. I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but it could happen.
But can I point something out? Clermont beat Celtic. Clermont won in Europe. I don't think necessarily that's the major issue with Rangers, do we? It's not that.
Gemma
it's
Fay
the ability to do all the other stuff.
Discuss.
No, Gemma Fay offers another opinion when it comes to it. Because if you look back and you just take Clermont, yes, he didn't have much success, but towards the end, beating Celtic, getting this far in Europe, you can't base the ability to manage Rangers on high moments. You base the ability to manage Rangers on, can you go to Dens Park on a crappy night in December and play the way you want to play and get a victory and break down a team?
Yeah, or beat Motherwell at home.
The fact that, yeah, exactly. And the fact that Rangers haven't had a match is like really beneficial.
We will hear from Jose Mourinho later and Barry Ferguson. Keep across BBC Radio Scotland and the website for that. Finally, Queen's Park losing 2-0 to Partick Thistle last night. We heard from Cammy Kerr yesterday, the injured Queen's Park defender, suggesting that this was the game that they had to win to keep close to the Championship playoff spots. I take it, Gemma, that Thistle now 7 clear of Queen's Park. That's Queen's Park's race run for the playoffs.
Yeah, it just looks a little bit too far now, doesn't it? Considering you've also got Greenock and Raith who are a point ahead of them, so it does look like it's perhaps a little step too far for Queen's Park. But a good win for Thistle and football's busiest man as well.
Yeah. Just before we go, by the way, who is football's busiest man?
Mr. Brian, isn't it? Brian Graham?
Why would that be?
Does he sleep? I don't know if he does.
It doesn't matter if he's beaten Queen's Park 2-0. He can.
True.
What's that line from the horrible James Bond film, Pierce Brosnan's last? What one is that?
Which one was that? Was Die Another Day?
Gustav Graves says, plenty of time to sleep when you're dead.
That is true.
That is true. That's Brian Graham.
I didn't love that film.
No,
wasn't my favourite. I didn't love Pierce Brosnan as James Bond, but that's the controversial.
No, steady. You've gone too far.
Who was your favourite James Bond?
Roger Moore, of course. I
grew up with Roger Moore as well.
Of course. So did
I. Of course.
I could tell you a terrible story involving my 15-year-old son, who last week, when I was unwell and lying on the sofa feeling really sorry for myself, Live and Let Die came on one of those obscure digital channels, and I squealed a squeal of delight, and he just looked at me in that way that a teenager looks at his disappointment of a father, and he says, "Dad, this." Mine
was the one that we had on repeat as kids was A View to a Kill.
Oh, superb! Absolutely.
That's a classic.
Listen, this
classic.
Gemma and Phil.
Nothing to do with football, but anyway.
Gemma and Phil does the Bond films. This is a podcast gold. We'll leave it there. Gemma Fay, Scotland goalkeeper and Scotland captain former. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Of course, it's the Daily Football Podcast. The clue is in the title. Click on BBC Sounds, press the play icon, and voila, you hear us speaking about James Bond in your ears. Or turn on your notifications. When the pod drops, it'll fall into your box. You'll be able to play it as and when you require. For now, though, I'm Phil Goodlad. Enjoy the beautiful game. We'll speak again soon.
On BBC Sounds. From life aboard a Russian submarine to chairman of Hearts Football Club.
At this stage, he was the hero.
But as his controversial decisions escalated...
They said, we're going to sack George. And I'm going, you can't do this.
How did Vladimir Romanov go from Hearts saviour to a wanted man?
They caused a whole load of chaos and havoc.
Romanov, Tsar of Hearts. Listen now on BBC Sounds.